Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Meet the Controller session with Damian, Kavanagh, head of BBC Three. We have lots to discuss over the next hour. It's been 7 months since BBC Three became purely an online entity, so we'll be discussing what Damian views as success, also what data is available in terms of the short form content. Damian's in a very unique position in that he is in charge of the first channel to move from television purely to online. This is both an opportunity and obviously a challenge. We'll ask whether or not this was the right move. Also, your opinion on what Shane Smith had to say, of course. And then we'll be talking about the future of BBC Three, what it's looking to make, and really where he hopes the channel will be 5 to 10 years from now. So I think before we start, just a little bit of housekeeping. We have an Edinburgh Festival app. And we will be taking questions via the app, so please, that should be up on the screen as you can see, so please send your questions through and we'll be able to ask those at the end. Damian, tell us, why did you pick these two particular clips?
I think I picked those two clips because I think, first off, they show the range of stuff that they do. They're very, very different. I think I'll start with Fleabag first. I just watch that. It just makes me smile. I think it's been an absolute breakthrough show for us. Phoebe is an incredible talent. She's written the show. She performs in it.
It's very unique in its concept.
It's very, very unique.
Well,
I think, the interesting thing, you hear a lot of discussion at Edinburgh this year and about, the kind of the intention behind what people are trying to do and allow a sense of authorship and a sense of voice. And I think one of my favourite quotes, one of my favourite reviews rather of Fleabag was in the Radio Times, and they said, the thrilling sound of a clear new voice. And I think that's absolutely what it is. And I think that's why Fleabag, I think, is a breakout hit for us. It's a breakout show, I think, across, the television landscape at the moment, because it feels very different. We often use the word distinctive in television about we're all striving for distinctiveness. But, when Fleabag came, it was actually commissioned originally as one of our comedy feeds, which, is a great place for us to kind of, explore and work with new talents. But as soon as we saw it and it was delivered as the feed, you just thought to yourself, this has got to go to series. It was absolutely amazing.
It was a co-pro with Amazon.
Yes.
So is that how you're going to make, more of your sort of big budget stuff in the future?
If we find a project and there's co-producers or partners, and regardless of where they come from, and we can do a deal that works, and there's an editorial alignment, and we're both trying to achieve the same thing with the show, we're absolutely open to it. Absolutely, yeah. And then I think Murder by My Boyfriend, Murder by My Father, rather. Why I chose that clip is, it's absolutely at the heart of what we're trying to do with factual programming on BBC Three, is to find a way into portraying and talking about and kind of forcing the issue, in a sense, about really serious contemporary issues in our society. There's a big issue around honour killings. There's a big issue about, I think that film, and what I wanted, and we talked about that film, and we talked about we made it, is I wanted it to be a film that felt a bit quite broad in its scope, and what it's fundamentally about is somebody who has fallen in love with somebody else being told they cannot love them. And I think there's some really powerful scenes in that where the father says to his daughter at one stage, "You've been promised." And it's just the idea, I think, that there are people around the world today who still live a life like that. I think it's something that we can shy away from it, and we very often do.
Do you think I love Fleabag. I think it's fantastic. My issue, if I'm honest, with Murdered by My Father was I felt that maybe it played into stereotypes. Do you think that particularly because your demo is young and actually much more outward looking than older generations, that actually what might have been more innovative if we're going to tackle a Muslim family was just a regular family story? It just seemed like the obvious choice.
It was, and we talked about this, and we talked a lot about how we do it, and we the conversations were long and they were in depth, and I think there was a lot of consultation with various charities, various various communities across the country. And I think, you can say that it is a stereotyping thing, but it is an issue that is quite prevalent in a certain kind of, part of society at the moment. And I think it's about when we kind of confront issues and we want to talk about things that are happening in the world, I think sometimes the best way to do it is to confront them head on and be really honest and say, there is a problem here. The problem is broader. Of course it's broader.
But then it's also making sure we have the balance.
It's about making sure we have the balance.
And then you also have just a regular, normal Muslim family.
But we do. We have, if you look across the range of our content and you look at, in our comedy and the stuff we're doing is like kind of, if you want to talk about like, Asian provocateur, look at the relationship between Ramesh and his mum. It's kind of, I think the portrayal across the piece is, we have range.
I'll give you that. Okay, so now let's talk about your sort of commissioning process. Now, with a lot of the long form content, so obviously your balance is 80% long form, 20% short form. Your sort of previous tagline was "Make me laugh, make me think."
Still the same tagline.
Still the same tagline, and then those two clips kind of represent that. Do you feel constrained in the sense that, for your long form content in particular, most of it has to be able to play on either one or two. Yeah. So does that in any way, and this is a question that's been coming through a lot from people at the conference, does that kind of take away BBC Three's identity?
Not in the slightest.
Not in the slightest.
I commission shows for BBC Three. I commission shows for our audience. We know, and it's the trust put it in the conditions of BBC Three going online, and it's a universality issue really, because people in certain parts of the country don't have access to broadband, so that they have to have access to these shows. And we commission it with that in mind. I would never ever, and I say this to people all the time, we can't start commissioning BBC 1.5 type of shows because they're not going to work. The reason the shows that work for us and cut through on BBC Three is because they have an integrity about them, they speak to that audience, and they have an authenticity. And I think if we start trying to serve two masters, we're just going to fall through the gaps. So first and foremost, a commission for BBC Three, and it's amazing. I think between the way we work with the guys on BBC One and BBC Two, we're getting really brilliant slots for these shows on those channels, and they're doing an amazing job there. But BBC Three, our audience first and foremost, no compromise.
So how much does it concern you in terms of not being able to actually know who's watching your content online, because you're not able to determine the demographic, are you?
Well, BBC...
How do you know if it is 16 to 34?
We know that iPlayer skews younger than other parts of the BBC, and it's got a massive constituency of the audience that go to iPlayer, 16 to 34-year-olds, so you can extrapolate.
But you don't know the figures.
But we also do some qualitative research with people, and you get a sense from that. We don't know the actual figures, and but BBC...
What do you think it is roughly?
In terms of the demographics? Well, I can give you examples, okay? So, if you take a show that has played on iPlayer and it's done really well on iPlayer, and then it moves to BBC One or Two, so Reggie the Insider, lots of other stuff that we play on BBC One, you're talking double-digit shares of young people when it goes to BBC One. So I think those shows are appealing to young people. Don't forget as well, when we're putting these shows onto iPlayer, we're also having conversations with our audiences across social media. We know the people who are on social media. See, I think, just let me go back to the iPlayer thing. I think there is, sign-in will be introduced to iPlayer, and I think once we get sign-in on iPlayer, we will have a much better understanding of our audience.
Of knowing who is.
Exactly, and I think that's, and I think it's
which is key for you.
Which is absolutely key, And I think across the stuff that we're doing on social media, we know who those people are. I think I don't want to jump ahead now to short form, but with the short form stuff, I think there's really interesting learnings coming out of it about your audience is in real time commenting on the content that you're making. So you've got a sense of who they are. But you've also got
just by the tonality.
But you've got a sense of how they're feeling about it and what it's saying to them. So I think we're all having this conversation. I know it's been kind of talked about a lot at Edinburgh this year. This world is incredibly complex in terms of measuring and getting meaningful audience measurements. And I think we have a team at the BBC who are working really, really hard on trying to crack this, because it's important. More and more stuff is going to go this way, and it's going to be consumed in these type of ways. And I think James Harding was mentioning it this morning at the Question Time debate. This is an industry problem. It's not just a BBC problem. We all have to work together to find a way of meaningfully
identifying
understanding those audiences.
Yeah. And so obviously the Think Box stats have come out, and it's quite interesting. So ITV2's figures are up 27% in 16 to 34-year-olds. E4's up 4%, and it seems as if BBC Three is down 18% for 16 to 34.
The Think Box stats
is
a Barb report. BBC Three is not on television, so BBC Three is not included in that.
Yeah, but BBC in general.
But there's a couple of things I would say on that. Is number one, it's measured over a very, very short time period, and there was adjustments made to it. And when you start to adjust methodology to try and talk about figures, I'll give you a small example. Is if we talked about those figures and we measure them for the last couple of months, right? And I think they measure them over 6 months. Yeah. Things change all the time. In the last 2 months...
But BBC Three has been online for 7 months, so it's about right. Though,
but what I'm talking is you don't know. The devil is in the detail. What shows were driving those and what shows were happening, you know? And I think you look at the other night, and if you ran those figures again, Bake Off is back on BBC One. Bake Off got nearly 3 million 16 to 24-year-olds watching it the other night. Straight away, those figures have changed. And the Olympics were viewed by lots of young people straight away. And so the BBC's share will go up. It's really dangerous to start measuring figures over a 6-month period and trying to extrapolate the kind of, a big theory about them, because they will change over time depending on what shows are in the schedule.
Okay, so we have a question from our question wall, and this is from Harry Bell, who's the creative director of Turn TV.
Everyone talks about wanting new talent, but increasingly on screen it's the same old, big, old talent. How do you evaluate the risks and rewards to commissioning new talent and old talent?
Damian?
BBC Three is all about new talent. We've just seen Fleabag there, new talent. We've seen Murder by My Father, Vinay Patel, first piece that they've written for TV. New talent comes through. We've launched 6 new comedy feeds next week, all full of new talent. We've got a drama class launching later on in autumn, written by Patrick Ness. It's the Doctor Who team behind it. The 4 main leads in that are all brand new talent, alongside the brilliant Catherine Kelly. It's what we do, it's part of the DNA. We've also got, and I think now, the interesting thing on BBC Three is we've got a bigger opportunity to give more new talent a break. We're working hard. And
because you're online.
Well, with Max and his team and, the kind of films that we're doing, the shorter form films, so Drugs Map of Britain, we've already had, Josh Hadlow's has presented one of them. Livy has presented one. We're getting a lot of new talent through, so I don't feel we have a struggle with talent at all. It's part of our DNA, absolutely what we do, and that's what BBC Three is there for.
How important is the established talent? Because for me, I love the stuff that you do, obviously with Reggie, which is amazing, and Professor Green, and for me, I was like, love that. I even went to seek out the people that made those shows, particularly Professor Green stuff with the Antidote guys. How important is that talent in sort of enabling you to sort of create the brand, as it were, to then bring in? Because there's obviously the established talent that sort of develops the identity.
But I think if you look at, we kind of, you can still have your established talent on the channel, and you can make space for new. Professor Green, it's interesting that you say he's established talent, but it's interesting to say he's made 3 films for us to date. I went for a drink with Stacey the other day. I think Stacey's made 30 or 40 films for us. It's like, she's very, very established. Professor Green's very, very new. But you kind of think we've just had Getting High for God, 2 documentaries, and one presenting those from. So there's lots of new talent coming through all the stuff we do all the time. And I think, when you have talent of the quality of Stacey and Reggie, and talent that speaks to that audience in the way that they do, I cherish them. Like, Reggie, Extreme Russia, won the best factual show award last night.
It did, congratulations.
Look at it. Also, I will say, since I'm sitting here, 3 BBC shows in BBC Three shows in that list. But that's against Bake Off, that's against Marigold Hotel, that's against big shows. We are making really high quality stuff with amazing talent, and I cherish them, and I want them to stay on BBC Three and stay working.
Okay, all right. Okay, so now we're going to look at your short form content. So we have Things People with Down Syndrome are tired of hearing. So let's have a look at that. Okie dokie. So that's an example of your short form content. Why did you choose this particular
I chose that because Things Not to Say To has been a breakout hit for us. We've commissioned a series of them. That film, Things Not to Say To, or Things That Person with Down Syndrome Tired of Hearing, has been It's got a reach of about, I think, around 40-something, 50 million. It's been viewed 23 million times. The really interesting thing and the more powerful thing for me on it is being shared over 200,000 times. Over 200,000 people have watched that film, and it's moved them in a way that they thought, my friends and my network need to see this. It is full, if you read the comments on it, it is full of positivity, a sense or a need for people to want to understand this world. We've done one on autism before. Absolutely gangbusters in the ratings for us as well. I think the really interesting thing is this is a film that has been made specifically with Facebook in mind. This is Facebook video. This is, and when I was talking here last year, and people were asking me, what exactly are you doing for BBC Three? What are you doing? And we're trying to do something very different. And I think the approach to making a film like that, Asif, I see, is executive, is alongside Mentor, is sitting there. The approach to these films is a very different approach to making a TV documentary. And I think there's a lot that we've learned from it, not only in how you execute a film like this, but a lot to learn from it in how you release a film like this and how you make it get to the level where it's got tens of millions of views and that amount of shares. And I think, there's an interesting thing that Asif was talking to me about with those films is the bowl. You kind of think, well, what's the idea behind the bowl? The really interesting thing about the bowl, and it's, you come through this through experimentation, is what it does is it removes the director from the process. It gets the director away from it. And it means that the subjects within the film, or the contributors in the film, are much easier and they engage a lot easier in the conversation, a much more naturalistic way. But they've just been massive for us.
It's the first sort of short form content that you've got proper data on, though, isn't it?
No, we did a thing about the Premier League coming back last week, which was a mashup between Anchorman and all faces of all the managers in the Premier League. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's absolutely brilliant, hilarious. That's actually got bigger numbers than that. Just on those numbers, one thing I will say is we're really early days into this at the moment, and we are making massive progress. And I'll give you set in context what that progress is. The BBC measures all its social accounts across the BBC. So there's a table and there's a report that comes about how all the social accounts are performing. That's news, that's sport. News, remember, has got, I think, 30 million followers on Facebook. The two films, that one and the football one, are in the top 10 since they've started measuring. So in a year, we've only been going 6 months. 6 months. We've already got 2 pieces of short form content in the top 10 of the whole BBC. And that's, as I say, that's news video and news content included as well. That's success.
So what's your vision for BBC Three? So are you seeing the short form content almost like a sort of BuzzFeed that sort of is able to be viewed across platforms? And then the long form almost like a Netflix where you would want people to come to you?
Well, the long form is the long form really by its nature and by the deals that we're doing with people, it's got a different role. It plays an iPlayer. We can't put it on social platforms for various rights reasons. The short form, I think, is, the interesting thing about it is it has the film. So as I say, with that we've done, in that series there's things not to say to a person with facial disfigurement, things not to say to a person with HIV, things like so it's got exactly the same type of purpose.
And you can be much more reactive with the short form.
And it's got
like the stuff with Stacey.
But they are really hard films to make. They take a long time. They're really difficult to cast. You need to find the right people. You need to find people who can kind of perform in front of a camera. They're very, very hard to make. But yes, we want to move that into scale, and we want to be really successful in that area because it's working for us. And I think. Would
you increase it from the 20% output?
Let's keep playing within the 20%. We've still got a lot of scope, and one of the really interesting things that we have to do is we need to really start interrogating everything we're doing in that space and learn and try and understand. It's one of those kind of things. I don't know if anyone in the room reads about BuzzFeed, and you read about how they understand their audiences and understand their content and understand what you have is when you've got somebody sharing a film like that and writing a comment underneath it, you get incredible insight into where the emotion came from or what moved them to share it, and all that has to be fed back into the development process.
So other than this, what else has really worked for you in terms of short form?
In short form, a Hood documentary that we did, I don't know if people have seen it, it's a comedy, which has been, the first episode of that on our YouTube channel last time I looked, nearly 1 million views. We did a short piece of content with Taylor Lautner and Greg when Cuckoo came back at over 1 million views. We've done Max's films, the Drugs Map films, they're kind of 900,000 views. They're kind of a young team of really brand new directors, brand new presenters. If you haven't watched those, I would urge you to watch them because they show a side of Britain and a kind of a glimpse into the lives of people, whether it's the effects of things like legal highs are having. We did a film called Scotland's Little Helper, which is about people, it's shocking, people who are addicted to Valium. And when I'm talking about addicted to Valium, I'm talking about taking hundreds of tablets a day. You know, there's a real range of stuff. They're doing really well.
But that's not really short form, though.
It is, well, it is. But see, we've had this debate before. Where does short form begin and end? You know,
I don't know, I'm asking you.
But it's like, but this is what I've said the whole way along, is the piece of content that we're making will take as long as it takes.
Okay.
It's about, you know, but it's about how we're set up as well. Like
so would you make, you know, a program that sort of somebody came up with an idea and within 2 days it's up?
We've done it. We did it with, so with Stacey, we did 2 films, one after the Orlando shooting.
The Orlando shooting. Was that as quick as that?
Well, she had to fly to America, and I think I got a call. I was at Sheffield Documentary Festival. I think I got a call on a Saturday. I can't remember, Saturday maybe, and we had it up on iPlayer by the Thursday.
Okay.
And we did another film with her as well about. She actually texted me. She said to me she was just the stories that were happening that were coming around about. In Europe about the immigrants, and there was a lot of people going to be moving up towards the border with Macedonia, and she wanted to go and film that, and that was kind of the same thing. That was
a 3-day, 4-day turnaround.
A week maybe, and the film was turned around. And I think we're getting better at those, and I think we need to kind of, you know, learn from what we've done before and kind of do stuff that feels more reactive as well.
Okay. And so at the moment there's a lot of comedy. Do you think you need a bit more of the current affairs, more of the make me think?
We do a lot of current affairs. We've got, you know, I know I don't want to preempt you, but we talk about what's coming up. I think the mix between comedy and, for want of a better word, serious factual stuff that we're doing, I think the balance is about right, to be honest with you. I think
okay.
There's enough of each. There's not enough of it. There's never enough of each.
Now, can I ask you to be honest, Damian?
No.
Please.
Yes.
The website.
Yeah. Do you know, I'm going to be, see, but it's hard.
Because can I just say, you know, the content, to your credit, you know, the content is brilliant. You know, you have commissioned and your team has commissioned some really good stuff. But the presentation.
But can I just say something?
Yeah.
Okay, I will say something. I wouldn't sit on this panel and criticise a contemporary's channel or the programmes on the channel. I work with the people who have built the website. They have built it within certain. I'm trying to be really honest but open.
Yeah.
I'm not going to criticise it. All I will say is there's improvement to be made, quite a lot of improvement to be made. We work in an organisation where I can't really go away and start to just build something completely new, because it has to be able to join with all the other infrastructure within online. We have really big plans about evolving it. But if anybody else wants to, and you know, one of the ways I can get any change to happen is we need people to feed back and comment, because I do think like there's things on it about.
But are your hands tied in terms of what you can do with the website because of the BBC structure?
I don't run the build of the website. I run the curation, the
content,
and the. But do, and believe me, really believe me, we have big plans in place and we're moving ahead with it. And we have, if anybody deals with the online world, you know, we have a roadmap. I hope it leads somewhere nice.
Yeah. So do I. So can you...
I've been very diplomatic.
Yeah, you've been good, but I'm going to ask you some more. So can you... So tell me, what do you like about the website?
Excuse me. Let's come out another way. The colour. Do you know what? Do you know what I really like about it? It works. Things play.
It plays really well.
Things play.
I'll give you that.
Don't take that for granted. But look, one of the big things that we have to do.
Because don't you think? I mean, if you look at just as you know, I'm not being facetious here, but if you look at sort of the demographic that you're going after,
I know.
You know, these are people who swipe for a date. You
of course
know
they
what
do.
I mean? So
of course they do.
To make them work that hard to find really good quality content that I have to say you've created brilliantly.
Look, we have an issue.
Especially if you're an online entity now.
We seriously have an issue with the user journeys and the website.
Yeah.
we need to improve them. Interesting thing is we're getting really good numbers to it, but what we're seeing is we're getting good numbers.
Are you getting good retention?
We're getting good numbers to single item view, what we call it single item view. So we're getting to individual pieces of content, but there's no really good, meaningful onward journey afterwards, and we've got to crack it.
You've got to crack that.
Stamping my foot saying this has to be cracked.
Thank you for being honest. Well, give him a round of applause for that, because, you know, he was honest. Okay, now, this isn't a question from me, Damian, so you can smile. This is from Rod Henwood, back to our video wall, and he's the CEO of Zodiac.
Hi, Damian. Would you agree that pact terms of trade should apply to digital commissions as well as linear commissions in a multi-platform world? Seems only fair.
They are different. The digital world and the linear TV world, for want of a better word, are different worlds. And I think you've got to understand what we're trying to do, or what anybody who puts content in a digital environment is trying to do. The big difference between it and a linear environment is one of the big differences, is it's a connected environment. And what that connectivity brings is a sense of engagement and a sense of sharing. Now, so for instance, the things not to say to films that we have, they've got massive numbers. If I didn't, and I think what the question really is about the global rights situation. If I said, okay, we're just going to make that piece of content UK only, it wouldn't work. It's not that I'm trying to get audiences in America or Australia or Russia or anywhere else. But the truth of it is, everybody in this room has friends in their social networks who live abroad. Now, you share something with your friends, and then they go to look at it, and it says to them, this won't play in my thing. It's just not a good experience. And I think that's the reason we want it to be able to play globally. And it's really, really important to us. And I think they just by nature of the platforms and nature of what they are and what they mean, there's a difference, and it has to be that way. So I think we're having conversations about, you know, the terms of trade. I'm not having a conversation about the terms of trade, but we're having conversations about how we can do deals with people.
So obviously this audience is mainly made up of program makers. So, you know, what is the process in getting something commissioned on BBC Three? What are you looking for? Do you like sizzle reels? You know, new companies, established what?
Do you know what? We've got amazing teams across, you know, within the genres, and people who are deeply engaged with BBC Three, who really, really understand BBC Three. So I would say, look, I think in my experience of kind of being involved in channels, involved in commissioning stuff, it all starts with a relationship and a really good conversation. And I think just get to know the commissioners. And
but if somebody's really new and doesn't have the contact with, can they cold call?
The commissioners, I'm not getting myself into trouble here, but the commissioners' jobs are, and I feel really strongly on BBC Three, that we need to be getting out and having conversations with a lot of people and lots of different people. If we have the same conversations with the same people all the time, we're just going to get the same type of content. And we need to, you know, broaden the net, and, you know, there is a lot of scope to do lots of different things. And I think, you know, so I think that's one, is, and then beyond that, just kind of, you know, having a conversation. Like, sometimes people can just mention, I'll just give you an example. I know we haven't got it here today, but we're doing a thing next month, I think it is, called the post-mortem obesity. It's quite a bold idea, and it's basically we're doing a post-mortem on an obese person. When I say obese, the person's only 17 stone, to see what being obese really does to your body. And it's looking at the internal organs, and I'll tell you, it does a hell of a lot. It's kind of, we understand, the pressure. I think we understand obesity from the outside, and this will give people a real glimpse to what it does to every single organ in the body. The genesis of that was, a guy, I won't say who it was, who is a presenter actually, a TV and radio presenter, just pinged me an email one day, just saying to me, I think obesity is a massive problem, we need to do something with it, and I have this idea. And from then, I brought the email to a routine, and with the factual team I said, I think there's something in this, a really good idea, and we talked about who, and then we said, oh, who could make this for us, and it happened. So I think, you know, don't send me long emails, because you know, my job is not to, but I will always pass them to the genre. But it's really important that people go to the genre first. And the reason behind that is I can't start having conversations with people while somebody in the genre might already have an idea with the BBC One or BBC Two.
And
that's in a similar territory. And that's what they're there for. And that's their job. And they are brilliant. So if you go on to, and that's across all the genres, if you go on to the BBC Three commissioning page, all the names are there.
And their emails.
And their emails,
Okay, so let's look at another clip that you chose, and this is Annie abandoned at birth. So that actually was...
October should be proud. They're the people who found Annie, and they're the people who brought us her story.
So that was actually a taster tape, wasn't it? So
you know, just that line she says in that tape, where she says, you know, I'm not embarrassed about me, I'm proud to be who I am, and other people have the problem. That's kind of at the heart of what we want to do with BBC Three, with a lot of our factual programming. And it didn't, you know, I didn't just commission, we have I don't know if you've announced it yet, but hey, I'll tell you. We've got a season coming up of sorts at the end of, in March, I think. And the kind of umbrella, we won't market it like this, but it's called Proud to be Me. And what we want to do with that season is just explore people from different backgrounds whose lives are kind of have, you know, turned in different ways, who have a really strong sense of themselves, but for some reason, society, whether it's the fact they're born with HIV, whether it's the fact they were born as mixed race into a traveller family, whether we're looking at something where we've got access to Native American Indians in Utah who literally are completely marginalised in a town and have no opportunity. And, you know, we're looking at doing a drama doc called Murdered for Being Different. And I think it's just a really important thing for us to do on BBC Three, because, you know, I think particularly, and, you know, that theme, I think, kind of flows through a lot of the Things Not to Say To films. What they are is films about, and I think for a lot of young people who are trying to find them, get a sense of,
where
you know, the world and where they fit into the world. And look, let's not forget that, you know, to be gay in this country was illegal not too long ago. And now, you know, civil marriage is here. And I think we, as a kind of, you know, as a public service broadcaster and a society, need to say to people...
That's a really good point, because obviously, you know, post-Brexit, and we've seen the rise in hate crime. Do you think BBC Three actually has a role to play in making people understand the other? And
I think we've got a role to say about, you know, that we tell stories about people who are different to them, but we tell them in a way that what you're exposing is the humanity of the people, and you try and get to a situation where we don't have to be afraid of each other, and we don't have to, we know when we see somebody who has a facial disfigurement or you know, who has a disability, that we don't have to kind of walk around thinking that we're scared to speak to them in case we offend them. I think, you know, we need to get those things out there, and we need to talk about
So do you have targets in terms of diversity? Because I'm, you know, as a black person and as someone who's worked in this industry for a very long time, I'm actually someone who's in favour of targets. You know, I think sometimes the system is that bad, it needs a jump start. So for you, even if it's not sort of entrenched, is it in the back of your head? Do you think
we would say when
I'm meeting my job if I have X
when we're casting any, look, I think, and I'm not trying to be, you know, holier than thou here at all. We do not have a problem with diversity of any sort on BBC Three. It's just we're a young channel. We have to kind of reflect young people in Britain. It's just part of what we do. I think we're actually really good at it. Yeah, but actively, I don't just let it happen. I think actively we will. When we're casting a show, you know, if we're casting an entertainment show or we're casting whatever, I will say, if there's contributors coming up, I'll say, you have to make sure that there's, you know, more diversity reflected in that.
And is that also with the production companies you work with? The production companies, sure that behind the screens as well.
The people in our office is, you know, very young, very diverse.
Does that include you?
I'm young there. You know, and there's amazing diversity in there as well, and you know what? And it's diversity across everything. It's diversity across, you know, and social class as well.
Of course.
I think that's a really important thing. One of the things we forget a lot, I think, is, but you know, to have those voices that have very, very different experiences. It's our
So if you're looking to sort of add to your team, what sort of skills are you looking for?
Well, we you know, within the team that we have, you see, we've changed quite a lot in terms of, because we were a commissioner broadcaster, now we're a commissioner producer, content releaser, or whatever way you want to characterise it. And, you know, Max runs the daily team, and within that team, there's lots of people who are, you know, there. It's quite interesting. A lot of them can shoot themselves. They can not shoot themselves. They can shoot. They can shoot.
Let's hope not.
They can shoot. They can cut. One of the things I'm really kind of, and you see, I think this again is for people in the room to understand what we're doing on BBC Three. Here we're talking today about video and things that we have done for years. We're producing a lot of original journalism. So if you go on the website, there's a lot of, I just got sent to sign off earlier today, because there's a few things in an article about mental health in the dance music business. And we've gone an interview with Neil, I've just completely forgotten his name, from Left Field, him talking and being very honest about the impact impact of living that life has on mental health. So there's lots of journalism coming through. And I think, you know, it's incumbent, and this is one of the reasons we did BBC Three, and incumbent on the industry, we have to make sure that we train the next generation of people to make the content like, for instance, and think in a way that they could produce shows like Things Not to Say To, because it's a different skill, and it's a different way, it's a different approach, and I think that's one of the things that I'm really keen on.
And it's a new style of programme making as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have another question from our video wall, and this is from Pat Young, Managing Director of Sugar Films.
Damian, you've done a lot in terms of BBC Three, in terms of making content that's now very non-linear in its mindset and its approach. But what are you going to do in terms of content that's genuinely interactive and genuinely social?
You know, it's quite interesting. I've been asked, and I've been giving this quite a lot of thought. It depends what the interactivity is, and you know, interactivity could be anything from. I'll be really honest, and I'm not a believer in broken narratives or whatever. I don't know what the word for them is. People choosing their own narratives and stuff. I think because one of the things we not rely on. One of the things that we're trying to do on BBC Three is that sense of giving people a voice and authorship. And I think, you know, I don't want to reinterpret a Steven Spielberg movie, for instance. So it depends what the interactivity is. Interactivity is it can be how people engage on our social platforms. It can be, you know, is a quiz. If we develop a quiz mechanism that you can use to tell stories with, is that interactivity? But I still feel that in the early days of BBC Three, what we've got to get brilliant at online first is storytelling. What people are going to come to is brilliant storytelling, and we have to crack it and really understand how we do it online. And then the interactivity. I've been having conversations with people, you know, there's a lot of interesting things, you know, and I think in part of the evolution of the website, somebody was telling me about this thing the other day where you can invite your friends online to watch a video with you at the same time. So back to that shared experience type thing, you all put in a password and you can literally invite thousands of people. But if one person pauses, it could be a bit annoying actually. If one person pauses it, the film pauses for everybody. But then you've got comments, whereas opposed to being on a Twitter thing that's separate. So you can create moments. So I don't know, will we take it up? I don't know if we found the right kind of project that we thought might make sense and that it might do. But I suppose interactivity is a continuum, isn't it? I don't know where we...
What is so... you know, when I think of when my generation of presenters started and previous generations, in that there was always the sort of youth programme that you sort of nurture talent through and then move them on to sort of the more mainstream channels, and allowed us to become good and make mistakes in a safe environment, which also created a community. So you had the show that was the show of a generation. And I think that seems to be missing. So how are you going to do that, where you, obviously it's a new way of making programming now, where you sort of create a community, but you also have that sort of signature show that sort of is the thing that pins it.
But I suppose
around.
what you're talking about there is it's a magazine show, isn't it? It's a show that's got many different elements in it that you need lots of different people
I suppose that's the website.
But the BBC Three is a magazine show. You know, it's got lots of different elements to it and lots of different people working in lots of different ways. I think through our office, through our work with freelancers, through how we work with the indie community, we're developing a network of sorts of young creatives, whether they're people who write for us, whether they're people who shoot video for us, whether, you know, so I think there is a network, and kind of, you know, Max is quite involved and engaged with, you know, quite a young community of really, really talented young creatives. Okay.
All right, so we have another clip, which is a new show you have coming, American High School. So that's Swan.
That's a 6-part series from
Neil.
Swan Films. They've been filming in a school in South Carolina for the past year, for the school year. It's a school where 99% of the pupils in the school are black. It's in a community where all the kind of white kids in the community are all going to the kind of private schools. It's the really amazing thing about it is the guy who's in whose name was just Steve, I think his name is. He was an educationalist and he was kind of involved in legislation and kind of bureaucratic stuff. And he's just gone back to the coalface to try and run this school. And what he wants to do is raise the bar for excellence in the school. And there's a really good football team in the school, so lots of the kids in the football team are trying to get to Ivy League universities via scholarships. But a lot of the kids are in extreme poverty in the school and they've got lives with absent fathers. It is just the most amazing, and it kind of, you know, when I see stuff coming in from it, when I watch that clip and that young girl at the end who does, excel in the school. It makes me kind of brings a tear to my eye. I think it's so powerful. And the kind of gist of it is that they're at that period in their life where the decisions that they make in school at that time are going to shape their life forever. And I think it's going to be for a young audience, but I think it will just really relate to people because of the kind of decisions that everybody makes. There's one young man in it.
Is that the kind of show that would then translate to a 1 or a 2? Or do you think
it will play on 1 or 2, and I'm quite sure it will
stay on 3?
If there was a second series, do you mean? Or?
Oh, no, I mean as in, this show seems very much a sort of distinctly BBC 3 show.
Yeah.
Would that sort of be will it move on to the...
It will definitely play, because as I say, all our long form stuff plays on 1 or 2, so that will play, I don't know where, but it will, that will definitely play on BBC 1 or 2, but it's kind of, and I think there's a really interesting, one of the things I was talking to the guys about with it as well, I think it's really interesting to kind of, we won't put it front of the film, but if you think of what's happening in America at the moment with the presidential election and Donald Trump and stuff, that is extraordinary, and that as a kind of for whatever you want to call it, a kind of a soundtrack or kind of in the background of the film, and that all this kind of extraordinary stuff that is going on there. It's going to be a brilliant series, a really brilliant, populated by incredibly compelling characters.
Well, it's sort of part of your American season, isn't it?
Yeah.
So after 6 months, 7 months, what do you think you're going to be commissioning more of? And what hasn't worked for you as well?
What hasn't worked? You know what? I think it's, and I guess every controller says it when they sit up here. It's all about, and running a channel is all about what you're going to do next, and it's about trying to learn from things you've done and understand what's happened and dial it up a bit and see how you can evolve it, and kind of, and I think that's where it is. That's where we are. Like, small examples I give you is, we did a season last year called Under the Skin, which is a season about racism, and it did incredibly well. Some of the shows in it, I think the KKK film that Dan Murdoch directed for us was one of the highest rating films that BBC Three has ever done. And just through that, it kind of made me think that whole area around hate crime was something that the audience are kind of, trying to understand. And then we decided that what we were going to do is do a kind of a deeper exploration. I wanted to almost do an anatomy of a hate crime. So we've taken in a hate crime, a couple of stories, and what we're doing is following them through the legal process. And it will be like a life and death row, but a really kind of deep, trying to understand what's at the heart of this and where the sentiment. So I think that, in a sense, is about when I talk about the evolution of BBC Three and how we notice something, or we notice a territory, we notice an area that's working really well, and then it's just thinking about what's the next iteration of it and how we dial it up. I think, a comedy is, God, look, I feel really privileged, and, I think Chris Sussman's here, but we've got People Just Do Nothing and Fleabag going out on BBC Three at the moment. That's incredible. They're two incredible comedies, and I think we've got great new stuff coming up. We've got good stuff coming back. We've got Dane Baptiste in Sunny Delight. I think, in entertainment, Ramesh is coming back in Asian Provocateur. We're going to have a chat next week with the guys from Top Gear to see what we're going to do around Extra Gear next time round. There's lots of really good stuff, but it's all about, I know it sounds like a Alan Partridge word, about evolution, and we just have to keep raising the bar all the time. Okay,
obviously, there is the big review of your service that's sort of within 18 months that will determine whether or not this experiment has worked. Is this the sort of stuff that you're going to be judged on? And are you nervous?
No. Look, I think we're making amazing content. I think BBC Three is at a period in its life where the stuff that we're doing, the stuff that we have on screens, is absolutely world class. We're learning and we're trying to get it to another show. You've got to remember that BBC Three has been a television channel for 12 or 13 years, doing delivering shows in exactly the same type of way. There's a bit of it where the audience are going to come on a journey with us and they're learning about the different things that we're doing, and that's going to take a bit of time. I'd never really classified it, and maybe you're making me nervous now. I didn't know that 18 months was the guillotine or the noose or whatever we want to call it. I thought it was going to be a review, as you would review anything in due process. But the way that I've characterised it in the conversations I've been having, with Danny, and now we're BBC Three is back in TV, and I'll be talking to Charlotte about this. I've always said BBC Three it's a 3 to 5 year project. This stuff takes a while. This is, already, we talked about the success we've had with short form. Already, the stuff that we're doing is cutting through. We're contributing. More people are clicking on our content in iPlayer now than they ever did before. Like, we used to contribute, I think, 4%, 4.3% to iPlayer. Now we're contributing some weeks, up to 11%. We're pretty much, I think, go on the iPlayer app now. I bet you we've got a good few shows in the top 10 of iPlayer.
But less young people watching the BBC. So there's
less young
since
people,
you came off.
Less young people have watched the BBC, according to the Thinkbox report, in the last 6 months. I haven't had a chance to really get under the bonnet of it yet and to drive. Just here's a fact, an irrefutable fact. BBC One is the most popular channel for 16 to 34-year-olds in the UK. Bigger than any other channel. So we're not saying that no young people are coming to the BBC.
But isn't that relative, though?
But they're coming. That's because of the scale. Yeah, but they're still coming. But if you get, like, the most popular factual show, one of the most popular factual shows for young people last year, factual shows, was How to Eat Well for Less. Young people care about their lifestyle. They care about what they're eating. They want to live a life that's kind of, they're getting value for money, but they can also eat nice food.
So they still like linear TV?
Beg your pardon?
So they still like linear TV?
Of course, well, that's different people. They like, more of them are moving online. They're doing different things online. You've grown up, if you think of something now like, Generation Z, millennials, this is a group of people who have grown up with the internet in their pocket.
Yeah.
They literally have never known a world that a multitude of screens doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So they're behaving in a different way and they're doing things in a different way. And part of the strategy of BBC Three is to try and make sure that when that becomes much more kind of widespread, that we're there and we're bloody good at it.
Do you think do you think that eventually, the E4s and the ITV2s are going to have to follow suit?
But I'll preempt your Shane question now. Well, I don't know what the question's going to be. But it's the flip. But they're doing different things. It might make more sense for them. But they're businesses. They're trying to make more money. And in terms of monetizing their content, a TV screen might be the best place for them to monetize it, because that's where the bulk of advertising money is, and still on TVs. It's kind of, I don't know what the answer to that is, but I think as less young people start coming to TV shows over time, people are going to have to try and find ways of reaching them on different platforms. That's what we're doing on BBC Three. Well,
speaking of the Shane question, of course it is, we decided to save the elephant in the room until last. And we have a question from Jane Millichimp, Managing Director of Sky Vision.
Hi Damian, can a counterculture brand like Vice Media work on linear TV, or will it ultimately abandon its subversive roots and its core audience?
Can Vice work on telly?
Yeah, because in a way, you guys have done sort of swapsies, isn't it? So Vice is going to television, and then you guys have come off.
No, but Vice have gone on to every screen. BBC Three is on every screen. We're on television. All our long-form stuff plays on BBC One or BBC Two.
But not as its own channel.
No, but still they get get really big numbers on BBC One and BBC Two. And Vice have. But back
to the Vice question.
But I'd make the point. But I think the answer to the Vice question going on to television is probably the same as the answer to my question about will E4 or ITV2 go away from the television channel. I think it's about they're in a game where they're trying to make money. Shane has shareholders to serve. What he's trying to do is be on as many screens where you can monetize the content, because don't forget the Vice content that you're going to see on Vice Nation in the USA, you're also going to see it on
YouTube,
the YouTube and all their other channels. So he's trying to put it in as many places as he can that he can sell an ad behind it. That's what they do, and he's there to make money. And and I think good luck to them. All the kind of stuff about Vice versus BBC Three, blah, blah. I'm not competing with Vice. I think the thing that people get confused with about all this is the world has changed, and this isn't a zero-sum game. It doesn't mean anymore because somebody is watching Vice, they're not watching BBC Three. It's even that 18% have, as if all those 18% of people who are not watching the BBC in the last 6 months have gone directly to ITV and E4. That's not the way it works. They're watching different stuff, and people can watch Vice and they can watch BBC Three and they can watch, it's not either or.
Well, obviously Shane said in his McTaggart speech that he thought it was a mistake that BBC.
He said he wouldn't. I think he actually said I wouldn't have taken the TV channel off now
Yeah,
and,
Channel 3.
but Danny, I think Danny said that at the time. It was not my decision to take it off. But I think Danny said at the time it was, we all know it was done of. The BBC, was in a position where they had to
as
find
the
more
person
money.
who's having to sort of steer the ship, as it were, was it the right decision?
I think so.
I
think we're making headway. We're doing really interesting stuff. We're doing really exciting stuff. I think we will, when in a few years' time, I think it'll be in a really. I think it's in a really good place at the moment, but we'll be even better at it.
So you're excited?
I'm very excited.
Okay, great. All right, so we have questions from the audience on our app. Okay, so this one says, can BBC Three shows only do well if there's an investment elsewhere, i.e. from Amazon? Doesn't say who it's from, but that's a question from the audience.
No.
Oh, they're anonymous. They're meant to be anonymous. Okay. Oh, you can ask whatever you like then.
No, we have
Go for it.
We have a lot of shows, but I don't really understand. So we do a lot of shows at the moment that we fully fund ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always nice to work with other people who have the same creative ambition as you. But yeah, the stuff, I think,
Okay. So Radio 1 are making online video docs on gaming, porn, dating, more for a young audience. Are you two in collaboration or in competition? That's a great question.
We work a lot, and I speak to Ben a lot, and we do very different things on BBC Three and Radio 1. We have a show, we're a service that's all about original British documentaries, drama, comedy, current affairs, and we do quite a bit of sport stuff online as well. Radio 1 is fundamentally about pop music and celebrity and that kind. They do a different thing. Yes, of course, there's ways that we can work together and kind of be complementary. But I think you're probably talking about the Newsbeat do, but that's their different part of Radio 1. I think the documentaries that you say there, and they don't do them in the same kind of scale as us. We should be working together, and we do work together. Newsbeat pick up some of our stuff. We pick up some of their stuff. I think we should. Yeah.
Actually, I have a question back to Shane. So one of the things he said was that, he would give £10 million to sort of young people to just go out and make whatever they want. Is that the kind of thing you do? So with the setup that you're putting together in
we
Birmingham,
have young people making our
would you just sort of
shows.
give 10% of your budget and say, go do whatever you want?
I don't think he does that. Shane's worth £1.2 billion. Tell him, go, Shane, do it.
Yeah,
it's
10 million.
I think, look, we do exactly what he's saying. Young people shoot stuff, young people cut it, young people write it. The big difference between BBC Three and Vice is I don't present my own shows on BBC Three.
And on that note, I think I'm going to bring this conversation to a close. That was a good one. That's a tweetable line there. Damian, thank you so much. Good luck with everything that you're doing with BBC Three, and we look forward to seeing the channel grow and evolve, and look forward to the new website too.
Thanks a lot.
And I'd also like to thank our sponsors, Broadcast, for making all this happen. So thank you very much, Broadcast. Thanks, Damian.